So yeah, I'll email out a copy of the recording. So if you want to share it with your colleagues, then you can do, or if you just want to refer back to it, then you'll be able to do that as well. Oh, there's a few more people arriving now that I said that I thought it was that we were done. So I'll give it another minute or so for everyone to arrive. I'm sure you're all listening, really enjoying listening to me prattle on. I will say something useful, I promise.
It's not 20 minutes of us discussing who's coming in and going out and the weather.
Exactly. Excellent. So should we, 3 minutes past, should we kick off, Catherine? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna share my screen because this morning Catherine and I have got some slides to share with you. So welcome to, and I can't remember, I've done 3 or 4 of the Much Loved modules now, but whichever it is, welcome. And they are designed as a series of short kind of bite-sized training sessions. So we won't keep you for long this morning. It'll probably be sort of 20 minutes, half an hour. There'll be, always an opportunity for you to ask questions. Please do use, as you already have started to, use the chat box, and just to make sure that you select your questions to panelists and attendees so that everybody can see the questions that are being asked, and then we sort of try and prevent kind of duplicated questions then, which is good, and obviously everyone can see what's going on. So this morning we're talking about stewardship, and Catherine and I have pulled together just 5 steps to successful stewardship. The idea being that, and oh, sorry, I was to also introduce Catherine, who I'm presuming most people have met now, but say hello, Catherine.
Hi there. Hi.
So Catherine and I are presenting it to you this morning, and hopefully we'll give you plenty of ideas. We've made a concerted effort not to overwhelm you with too much stuff, and also we've very much been conscious about providing information that's useful to everybody, because everybody's at different stages of their service setup or running your schemes. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone who completed the short survey that we sent out a couple of weeks ago, and your responses have very much helped us to develop the session that we're running this morning. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was that we have set up a Google group specifically for our Much Loved charity partners as an opportunity for people to be able to share best practice, ask questions and get support. Now my colleague Jason is running that, and if you would like to be part of it, it is kind of set up as invitation only. So if you'd like to be part of it, then please do send him an email, and there's also some information about it in our on our new support site. So Jason will kindly put the details of that, his email address, and also the details of where the information is on the support site. Oh, there you go, there's his email address. So he'll also paste the details of where the information is on our support site. So back to what we're here to talk about this morning. So we are going to give you 5 suggested approaches to stewardship. So the first one is all going to be about planning. I'm sure you don't really need me to read these to you. The second one is going to be the importance of thanking. The third, we're going to be highlighting about how best to communicate and who you're communicating to. Fourth, we're going to be talking about developing, and fifth will be the maintenance, to make sure that you can continue to communicate effectively and to develop those and maintain those relationships with your supporters. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine to run through the first 3. So, but I'm going to be the angle grinder. No, that's the wrong thing.
The controller.
The controller.
The controller of the slides.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's great. Thanks so much, Sally. As Sally sort of has mentioned already, I think this is a great opportunity to, if you are a new partner with us, to implement some stewardship steps, or revisit your current stewardship plan with some fresh eyes. There should be an opportunity at the end of the presentation, as we said, within the chat box, to ask questions, share ideas, and maybe discuss what has also worked for you. So the first one is plan. So creating a plan, if you don't already have one, or revisiting what your supporter journey looks like, is always a great thing to do. It gives you sort of an idea of what their journey is going to be, and if you can put yourself in the seat of the supporter and what you think is appropriate. I think the other thing that needs to happen is, when you make a plan, make sure you put some achievable processes in place. So take into account your resources, so your manpower, that would be you, volunteers, colleagues, and also your budget and time. So when you're making that plan, make sure that you're putting some achievable processes in place. Who's doing what and when? So a schedule, a plan of action, and reacting to the activity accordingly. Put the plan on paper, so put it into a document. It could be a written document, or if you're like me and you're very visual, it could be sort of bullet points in a sketch. I think having it laid out and down on paper will give you sort of a visual of how that journey is going to look for your supporters. And then discuss this plan with your colleagues. Ask for them to take a quick look at it. Getting their thoughts and their buy-in will increase the awareness of your tribute fund offering within the organisation. So that's sort of like the planning aspect, and who's doing what, and making sure your processes and everything is achievable. So next slide, please, Sally. Thank you. So thanking, obviously thanking is hugely important. We can't emphasize that enough, but knowing how you're going to thank your supporters. So engagement via the tribute page, you could do this maybe by lighting a candle, adding a virtual gift, include a personal message, and make sure that you always include their loved one's name. That is their reason, their motivation. So make sure that you use that personal content within the thank you message. The way you could thank could be phone, it could be email, it could be a thank you card. I think handwritten thank you cards go a long way, with other colleagues signing the card too. You could hold special thank you events, or even have a thank you wall. Don't forget, we do have the dedication page functionality, which doesn't have to have a mandatory R. So it could be a recognition and thanking within a dedication page, and using different tools and ways to thank your supporters. Always keep their loved one's name at the heart of your thanking. That's really important to sort of reflect on, you know, why you're thanking them, and keeping their loved one's name at the heart of that. Also, thanking them for supporting your charity. It's not always just thanking them for the financial income, but, you know, thanking people for just being there for your charity, irrespective of any sort of financial income as well. I think you need to look at when are you going to thank your supporters as well. So thanking them when a tribute is created, but also not just thanking those supporters, but looking at the wider scope of who you're thanking. So tributes created by funeral directors and third parties, don't forget to thank those people too. You've obviously got people coming to your own tribute offering and getting that thank you out to them, but don't forget those other people who have had tributes created by those third parties. They may have come to Much Love directly, or it may have been set up by a funeral director. So making sure that you're thanking those people too. And when you're going to thank, as I mentioned just now, is you know, initially, and then having a timeline, reacting to specific activity and milestones. If somebody adds an event, making sure you're thanking them for the support of for supporting you at the time of their event. And then what to include in your thanks. Obviously the name of the loved one, it's their who and their why. What you're thanking them for. So you're thanking them for income, are you thanking them for having a tribute page? It's making sure it's that acknowledgement of what you're thanking them for. And also, I think what's quite nice is if you can include within your thanks what and how their support, income or otherwise, has benefited the charity. Maybe it's helped pay for, you know, a sensory room or a nurse, or facilitating certain activities, you know, or future plans. So make that supporter feel they've made a difference. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I was just going to interrupt, Catherine, just because there were a couple of questions and they're relevant to your slide. So we've had, in your experience, how long after the tribute page opening should we contact for the first time for thanking and stewardship? In my experience, I would say, you know, do it fairly promptly. There's no point in hanging around. How you do it, obviously, is up to your resources and capabilities, I mean, I would always encourage that people are thanked quite personally. So whether, you know, you're sending out an email, just make sure that it's got lots of personal content in it and make sure it's right. But if you have got the resources, then, you know, actually phoning someone and thanking them for doing it is amazing. Or if that's not available to you, maybe popping something in the post, a handwritten letter or a really lovely, very well thought out letter is something else to consider as well. There's been one. Yeah, go on. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and also maybe think about the channel of where the tribute was created. So if it was created by a funeral director, which we obviously partner with lots of funeral directors, and they create the tributes and maybe supporting your charity, it may be that you have a slightly different approach on, you know, depending on where the tribute was created. And I always think there's nothing wrong with lighting a candle as soon as possible on a tribute page, and then maybe when the, you know, another opportunity 6 weeks later when the funeral director, or 8 weeks later when a funeral director you know, sends in additional income, then you can thank at that point, and then somewhere obviously in between. So yeah, as Sally said, picking up the phone, thanking them and things like that.
So there's one other question. Can you thank people if they haven't opted into your GDPR statement? So the answer is yes, you can get in touch to thank them, but you can't continue that sort of stewardship journey beyond the initial thank you unless they've engaged with you and you've got that opportunity and to ask. And then what type of candle would you light, and how long would you burn it for? Well, actually, that's a really good question. I mean, maybe some other people who are attending today could share with us what type of candles that they light. Obviously, Catherine and I never light the candles, but I mean, my recommendation probably would be that you light the one that lasts and burns for a year. Everlasting seems a little bit too long, and the one that burns for a month maybe isn't long enough. But actually, if anyone can share, that's here today, can share with us what they do, that would be really helpful. If you don't get the contact details for the next of kin from the funeral director, okay, you'll ask the funeral director if they can pass on a card to the family. So that's a really nice thing to do. You could also maybe speak to the funeral director and encourage them in future to try and put the next of kin information detail in the system, because you automatically get that. So we try to educate our funeral director partners to tell you know, so that they add information in, and they are getting much better at it. A lot of them do. So great. Thank you for all the sort of candle contribution ideas. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think just highlighting that as well is with the funeral directors is I think they always have this fear that if they put any contact information in, then the charity is going to bombard them with other stuff. So I think always, if you do communicate with them, obviously do let them know that obviously that you're not going to do that, just because, you know, that reassurance, and they obviously you can't do the additional marketing and things like that. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, but thank you for your contributions, because as Sally said, you're the experts. We don't like the candles, but actually there's probably some great tips and ideas that you all can share on here.
Excellent. So shall I move on to the next slide for you?
So the next step is to communicate. So when will you communicate with your supporters? There's the initial communication and then after. So having that sort of communication and knowing when and how you're going to do that. So who you're going to communicate with. So communication with the tribute guardians, obviously the people either creating it via your own scheme, or if the funeral director's popped in that tribute guardian, communicating with them. But also communication with the individual donors. So what I want to just emphasize here is that anybody who adds, or for our Optimum partners, when somebody makes an online donation via a tribute page, they get an email confirmation with their transaction ID and information in an email. Now our Optimum partners can include a bespoke thank you within those emails that we send out. A lot of you have it, but have a look at that thank you message with some fresh eyes, or if you don't have it implemented, make sure you add that in so that all the individual donors get a thank you and a recognition for their donation to your charity. Communicating with those fundraising in memory events. So is your GDPR marketing ask implemented on the Much Love platform? So again, our partners can have their GDPR marketing ask implemented. Make sure that you've got that done and it's up to date. And then supporters opting into hearing about your, supporters can then opt into hearing about all your wonderful news, events, and it's another sort of additional sort of means of communication, and for you to keep involved with them. And also, what are you going to communicate? What is your message? Make sure it's appropriate to what they've opted into if you are sort of going sort of further afield. But also, what are you going to communicate regarding the tribute and thanking them if they haven't opted in? So obviously thanking, as Sally sort of mentioned, is okay. It's a legitimate interest to sort of, thank somebody for their tribute. So just, what are you going to communicate? And ways to communicate via, as we sort of mentioned straight away, via the tribute. You can light a candle on newly created tributes, and maybe on a birthday and death anniversary, you can pull that information from the reports. At Christmas time, we have a Christmas candle that you can go on and light, and actually you can pre-light it as well. So you could do the work at sort of the end of November for all the candles to light on the 1st, 2nd or 3rd of December, or whatever you want that to be, with the message that will also appear at that time. Our Optimum partners can have their own bespoke virtual gift. So actually this is another sort of way to sort of communicate, and an excuse to communicate with your tribute holders. So you can have your own bespoke virtual gift that you add on to a tribute as well. To your in-memory eventers, it's a way to communicate that if they haven't got a tribute fund, that actually it's a great place for them to host their event, especially obviously if they're doing an in-memory event as well. Other ways to communicate in person, obviously that's not so relevant at the moment, but hopefully as things ease up with restrictions, you can sort of communicate more in person. With phone, giving somebody a phone call, letting them know you're there, thanking them as well, and communicating. Literature, thank you cards, bereavement packs, invite your supporters in. I think the key element here is to make them feel special. I think the other thing to communicate is make sure that you communicate internally as well as externally. We're talking here very much about 5 steps to steward your supporters, but actually don't forget to support and steward your internal colleagues, volunteers, and people within the organisation. And also make sure you're communicating with your funeral directors and maybe any corporate sponsors that you have. So the communication is obviously within your supporters and making sure they're communicated to, but don't forget to get that communication about tribute funds, about the opportunities for your supporters, that is bereavement space, to your wider audience as well. If you are doing some internal communication and stewardship for your internal colleagues, maybe lunchtime talks, keep the tribute offering at the forefront of those colleagues' minds, maybe with the intranet, posters, internal news, achievements made from your tributes, and what the outcome has been for your charity. So sort of maybe pull a report at the end of the year, see how much you've raised, and actually sing about it, and the amount that's been raised through your tributes or your in-memory offering. I think that's it from me for my 3 slides, and then Sally's going to take over with the last 2 steps as well.
Okay, there's a couple of questions I'm going to ask. So Natalie's asked, do you do anything to encourage funeral directors to ask the GDPR question? There's a lot of funds set up by funeral directors have question not asked. So we're not able to present the GDPR question to people, pages set up by funeral directors, because they're created by the funeral director, not by the family member. So they're created on behalf of the family member. So your GDPR question, there isn't an opportunity to present it to them unless they make a donation. So it might be worth kind of looking to see if the fact you can cross-reference with them, with any of the family of the taken ownership of the page, with the donor records, to see if they've opted in by making a donation. But there isn't the opportunity to present the GDPR marketing question to the family when the page is created by a funeral director, because they don't set the page up. Katie is asked about Christmas candles. So we make Christmas candles available on all of the tributes from around the middle of November until the sort of 12 days after Christmas. So they will automatically appear on all of your tribute pages. And like Catherine said, if you wanted to, and you're an Optimum partner, then you can have a bespoke gift, which you can choose to display at a particular time of year for a certain length of time, or you can have it available all the time. Isabel's asked how to update the copy in an automated email. Just email one of us, your account manager or support at Much Loved, and we'll get that changed. It's just a small amount of copy that you can update in that. I think it's about 490 characters or something. It's not very much, and it just sits in the body in the middle of the text of the thank you email. Yeah, Jenny said they asked themselves the next of kin in their thank you letter for their GDPR. Bereavement pact, does anyone share? Hopefully they will do. So no, there's no cost for you, Lorena, to burn a candle. The candles sit directly on the tribute pages, so you can go into your partner area and light a candle if you want to. Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to develop. So just a couple of ideas here, just to continue that contribution and usage of your tribute pages. The first kind of thing I wanted to talk about was incentivizing. Now, some of our partners already do this and do this really well, but there's still lots of potential here, and something small like a certificate, maybe when your supporters raise £1,000. So nothing expensive, but just a kind of nice marker to send them something in the post to identify that they've reached a particular target. And also it's really, so I'm going to turn the chats off because it's really distracting, isn't it, when you're talking? So I'll leave you, Catherine, to look at that. Sorry about that, everybody. Back to incentivizing. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a huge. You don't have to spend a lot on it, but just kind of encouraging people to maybe just fundraise that little bit more. So if they're aware that they might get something when they raise £1,000, or maybe you want to kind of make it lower at 500, just encourages them to push them a little bit further. So it could be a certificate, or it could be maybe the name of the person displayed in the charity's offices. I think one of our fund holders puts the name of the person being remembered on a perspex plaque on the side, on the wall of their offices, or I think they've got research laboratories. Or it could be something bigger, like sending them out a tree or a rose, or I think one of our charity partners kind of names a star. So there's lots of opportunities in terms of incentivizing, and you can very much kind of market to fit your audience and your organization and your kind of fundraising levels. Something else to think about is running a trigger campaign, and one of our colleagues, Jackie, who used to work for the Stroke Association, set these up there, and very successfully, I might add. So she ran a sort of trigger campaign where they emailed their supporters kind of after 1 or 2 months with a really nice kind of, we're here to help type message. Another communication around month 3, highlighting some of the functionality on the tribute pages, and there's a huge amount of functionality on the tribute pages, so loads of opportunities for you to continue sort of getting in touch with the fund holders to highlight some of that functionality that's available to them. So you don't always have to be asking, you could just be providing additional kind of information and educating them about the capabilities of their pages. Maybe consider a kind of ask at some point. And again, that could be really sort of soft and gentle ask. It might be reminding them that they can add in regular gifts onto their tribute page. And just before there's loads of questions about that, we can't facilitate collecting regular gifts, but there is a facility to add in offline regular gifts if you're an Optimum partner. And then finally, maybe kind of highlighting an event. And obviously we can't kind of run physical events at the moment, although hopefully in 7 months' time we will be able to, so that would be good. And then also there's the idea of a tribute leaflet. Now, there was loads of conversations about this in our last module session, and I have taken it all on board, and we are looking at developing a tribute leaflet, but we've been a little bit busy, and there's been a few Easter holidays in the way, so that hasn't progressed as far as I would have liked it to, but it will be coming along, and once it's available, I'll make sure that you've all got a copy of that available. So the idea is we just create a sort of templated version of a leaflet, which you can then, you know, take out the bits and pieces that you want, just to kind of give you an idea of the sort of thing that you can use. But the idea behind this is not a promotional leaflet, more a kind of information leaflet. So again, really highlighting the functionality on the tribute pages, you know, what people can do with it. And, you know, you can email that out in a PDF after a certain amount of time, could be part of your sort of trigger email campaign, or you can send a copy of it in the post, maybe straight after they've created their tribute. So they've got something to kind of look through and consider, so it's not all online, because it's quite nice sometimes to actually have something physical in your hand to have a look at. So that's just something else to sort of consider on the developing side of stuff. So before I go on to the next slide, are there loads of questions for us?
There's a few actually. Natalie's asked, is it okay, let me just see what she said actually. Is it okay to ask a GDPR question in the thank you email? Basically, the GDPR question is presented, we put it as a present it to the supporters, so it won't be within, you don't include it within the thank you email, because anybody who's donated online via a tribute page, there's 3 channels, they'll have been presented with your GDPR marketing ask if it's been implemented on our system. So the 3 channels who it's presented to is the tribute guardians if they're creating a tribute via your tribute offering on your website, i.e. via your widgets or landing page. Anybody creating a fundraising event on tribute page, they're presented with your GDPR marketing ask, and also all individual donors, they'll be presented with it. So it's presented to them on sort of different, you know, if it's a donor, it's on the page that they, as part of the steps. And then those responses sit within your Much Love partner area under users, and then use the GDPR responses, so you're able to export that out of there. There was another question, hang on a minute, let me scroll back up. Debbie asked, would it be possible when someone is creating a new tribute fund page for you to make it mandatory for the tribute owner to input their email? Actually, if it's through your own tribute fund scheme, that is a mandatory field. So anybody creating a tribute through your own widgets or through your landing page, the email would be mandatory. There's also some additional channels that you can make mandatory. They're there as an option, but you can make them mandatory, which I think is address, phone number and relationship to the tributee. The ones where you don't always get the email addresses is when they've been set up by the funeral director. So they create the tribute on behalf of the families, and that's where we're trying to encourage those funeral directors to include that contact for you to be able to get in touch with the tribute guardian or the next of kin and things like that.
Okay. And thank you, Pauline, for sharing your incentivizing kind of ideas. That sounds really lovely.
Yeah, it's really nice actually. The butterfly badge with a handwritten card is really lovely, and then certificates when they reach certain milestones. That's really good.
What did I mean by event? So on month 7, you could either kind of encourage them to set up an event within their tribute page, because there are event modules within the tribute page, so you can encourage them to maybe fundraise by setting up an event or taking part in one of your existing events. How do you set up auto emails to your tribute guardians? There isn't a facility through our service to set up automated emails to tribute guardians. That would be something that you would have to set up within your own database facilities, or using a kind of external provider, maybe like MailChimp or that kind of thing. Okay, so just onto the final sort of slide about maintaining. So obviously this is to sort of continue to give ongoing communication, so keeping in touch with your fund holders on a regular basis, unless obviously they have expressed a preference for you not to. Maybe consider things like sort of sending out, kind of, again, going beyond that sort of trigger campaign, and maybe looking at having regular monthly or quarterly emails are a nice way to sort of keep that engagement. And always include a link to the tribute page in the email. So that goes for the sort of trigger campaign emails as well. You know, you want to keep hold of that kind of fund holder momentum. So, you know, what you'll find is that they might be quite active in the first month or couple of months, and then it might sort of tail off a bit. And actually that's where that kind of trigger campaign kind of becomes quite useful, because kind of later down the line, when maybe you're sending out an email and encourage them to use more of the functionality, that helps to kind of keep that momentum going. And, you know, maybe consider having a special feature in your newsletters which highlights new tribute pages that have been created, or perhaps tribute pages that have reached a particular milestone. I think if you think about your fund holders, I mean, they're a very unique bunch. So maybe think about them a little bit like as you would a major donor. You know, they need a lot of kind of caring and nurturing. You know, they're a major donor, but they're bereaved. So they are a very unique bunch of supporters. So do always kind of keep that in mind. Another sort of way to kind of maintain relationships is to run some fund holder events. And obviously I realise they're not possible at the moment, but think about them as you would maybe run a legacy event. So some of our charities here I know have got the capabilities, they've got physical venues or offices where they could invite people in, an opportunity to meet each other. And again, to make your fund holders feel very special and part of a unique bunch of people. But actually, you know, why not run a Zoom kind of coffee morning? You know, now we're all so kind of confident and used to this kind of online platform that we've had to kind of get to grips with over the last year, and it is really accessible to people. I mean, I know I've talked about my mum before on these things, but you know, she's 80, she is quite a young 80, but she does a Zoom coffee morning every morning. She does her art classes on Zoom. You know, she would be, I think she even does a volunteer morning. She volunteers for a charity and they do sessions on Zoom. So it is completely feasible to run sessions like this on Zoom, and a really nice way to, again, kind of bring people together. Obviously, it's difficult to kind of have that sort of really lovely social element on Zoom, but, you know, a nice way to kind of feedback and say where the money that's being raised is being spent, and maybe a feedback on what the charity's doing and what their ambitions are for the coming year. And maybe also an opportunity to highlight some particular funds, and maybe even ask one of the fund holders to talk about their experiences of setting up a page. So lots of opportunities there. And then finally, I would just reiterate that it's always really important to make sure that you say thank you, and to make sure that your fund holders feel very special. They are, like I keep saying, they are a very unique bunch of people. And I think if the last sort of 12 months has taught us anything, that being bereaved is incredibly difficult, and people generally really appreciate extra support that they're given, but particularly at the moment, it must be a horrendous time to have to go through that. So, you know, by being able to offer the opportunity to set up a tribute fund and to get sort of that lovely kind of additional stewardship and bit of kind of extra support could make all the difference to your supporters. And if that relationship is nurtured well, they could go on and become incredible supporters of yours in the future. So I think that is kind of everything from me. Should we have a quick look to see if there are any kind of last minute questions or bits and pieces that anyone wants to share?
Pauline's very kindly offered to share their leaflet for their tribute funds, which is great. It's often every time we have an event, one of our modules, it is the leaflet that people are really keen to see. So that's really kind. Actually, what might be useful, if it's okay with you, Pauline, is for if you send the leaflet to us as well, and then maybe Sally can share that out when we send the recording. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think maybe even at one point we'll have a pool maybe on our support site or something where there's lots of leaflet and literature. And as Sally said earlier, we're hoping to get a sort of template to really help you guys create these tribute fund leaflets, which would be really good. Let's have a look.
So in terms of charities that have held a fund holder event, some of your hospice partners have done that, have they, Catherine?
Yeah, so well, they've actually done thank you events for the funeral directors. I know that. So some of them engaged very much with the funeral director and thanked them, and maintained and stewarded those relationships with their funeral directors, which has been great. They've had a sort of thank you sort of coffee morning type thing, and I know that some of them at the moment, one of them's talking about doing a short video just to give sort of 3-minute video to share with their funeral directors about the amount of money they've raised in the last year in funeral donations and what it's helped pay for, which I thought was really, really nice. What touch of use and also use of the virtual sort of recording, which I think they're just doing on really simply recording something on Zoom or something. I don't quite know, but I'll find out. And there's a once a candle is lit, is the page guardian notified? That's from Caitlin. I think what happens there is, if the page is set up, the pages can be set up so the tribute guardian gets a notification of any content that is added. So if the page is set up that way, then yes, the tribute guardian would get a notification. The default is actually that the page is created and anybody can add to the page without any kind of notification, but there are different ones depending. It is the onus is on the tribute guardian to set the page up how they want, with in terms of notifications of what they get. It can be even stricter actually, where the tribute guardian has to actually approve anything that's added onto the page as well. So yeah, it depends how it's set up. Yes, they can have it set up so that they get a notification of any content that's added.
Okay, and do funeral directors hand the pages to the next of kin after the funeral director? So no, sometimes the funeral director will set the page up and they'll hand it over to the family straight away. So the family will have control of the page before the funeral. And then somebody else has asked, by fund holder event, do you mean dedication pages set up as in our sunflower event? Not really. I think by fund holder event, I mean more of a specific opportunity to encourage your tribute fund holders to come together, ideally in a physical way, but obviously that's not possible at the moment. So maybe, we'd have to rely on a kind of Zoom sort of opportunity for them to come together instead at the moment. The dedication pages are slightly different in that they're sort of the standalone fundraising pages that allow people to leave kind of one-off messages and photos and make donations at the same time. But actually, when your Light Up a Life events kind of kick back off again, that is something that you could absolutely invite your fund holders to.
Just going back onto Helen's question again on, do funeral directors hand over the pages? I just want to emphasize a little something there, because some funeral directors worry about, or people kind of see it as it goes from the funeral director and over to the next of kin to manage. It doesn't. It still stays within the funeral director's partner area as well. They have a slightly different partner area, and it's like a dual. It just gives them the opportunity for the tribute fund holder to manage the page, and the tribute funeral director doesn't sort of lose the page itself. Just so it's sort of like not a page that's sort of physically handed over. It's just sort of giving shared or dual access to the tribute guardian to make some changes if they need to, and then obviously continue the use of the page. I think it's quite obvious with funeral directors, their sort of emphasis is in the first sort of 6 weeks, or initially at the funeral, and then donations for 6 to 8 weeks afterwards. What's great for yourselves as the charity is to sort of pick up that baton and continue that stewardship and implement those stewardship steps with those supporters and maintain that relationship with them.
Excellent, great. Well, so thank you very much, everybody. I think we've kind of covered all the questions. Thank you very much for joining us. I think next month's session, I can't remember the date, which is not very useful, but we'll send out an email, but it's all going to be about sort of internal promotion, but we'll make sure that you get an email with an invitation. And actually, if you look on your support site, which is available from your partner area, sorry, I can hear my building works kicked off, so I've had my allocated quiet time, so sorry about additional noise, but yeah, if you go to your charity support site, which is available from your partner area, there'll be information about future kind of much loved modules on there. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming along today. It's a shame we can't see you, but
yeah, it's been really good, actually. Thank you.
You're super active on the chat box, which is lovely and very much appreciated. So.
Yeah. The next event is actually Wednesday, the 26th of May at 11 o'clock. I've got it down here. So it's the 26th of May. We have it down at 11 o'clock, and it's the Much Love module on internal promotion. But as Sally said, from that manage button in your partner area, there's the training and support site with the information in there. Sorry, I'm now just chatting away. I can't stop.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you next month.